Hello and welcome everyone to the Mindful Running podcast. Our guest today is one of the most iconic race directors in ultra running history. Chris Kostman is the Chief Adventure Officer at AdventureCORPS and the race director of the worldwide series of Badwater events. He set world record ultra cycling records in high school and completed the 3,127-mile, which is equivalent to 5,032 kilometers, race across America in less than 11 days at age 20. This led to competing in events as diverse as the Triple Ironman in France, 300-mile snowshoe races in Alaska, 6 Ironman Triathlons, and more. As a full-time professional event promoter, since he was a teenager, he has produced and hosted over 150 ultra-endurance sports events. This includes the legendary Badwater 135, known as the world's toughest foot race, since 2000, and along with sister races Badwater Cape Fear, Badwater Salton Sea, and the Armenia Ultra Stage Race. Chris has also published over 250 articles about the endurance world, adventure, travel, archaeology, human potential, and the outdoor way of life. Trained and educated as an archaeologist at the University of California at Berkeley, he has led or worked on expeditions and excavations both undersea and on land in the Middle East and South Asia. He has also excavated at Harappa and studied Hindi and Urdu. He is a fellow of the Explorers Club. With that, I welcome Chris.
Namaste.
Hi, Chris. Namaste.
Nice to meet
And
you.
people are just joining in, and everyone's very, very excited and happy to hear you today. In fact, we already have a comment come in that says mind-boggling achievements.
Thank you.
I mean,
It's a pleasure
yeah,
to be here.
yeah, thanks, Chris. So we have lots to talk, Chris, but I will not waste much time. And honestly, the first question that comes into my mind right now is like you've studied so much, in on a subject which is archaeology related, and from whatever you've studied, that's your background to what you do right now. Which is into endurance sports and being race directors at multiple various ultra events. So, what has your journey really been like from there to here?
Well, for me, I love traveling. I love meeting people. I love going to new places. And I love equally creating opportunities for people to do that. And so that's really what has always driven me. I grew up with my parents were school teachers. We traveled extensively. In fact, for 1 year, twice when I was growing up, we traveled around Europe and North Africa. And so, you know, learning languages and seeing what's over the horizon and meeting the locals and eating the food, those are things that have just always, been part of my life and that I really love and enjoy. And I discovered bicycling when I was 14 through one of my parents' school teacher friends who had gotten into cycling and had spent 6 weeks bicycling across America. And we had just come back from our second year-long travel, which included driving across America at the start and finish of the trip. We literally took our car from Los Angeles across the US to Europe, to North Africa, back to Europe, back to the East Coast, drove it back across America. And so I could picture in my mind the American, the North American continent and what that was like. And then the idea of bicycling that, under my own power just really intrigued me. And so I was already an entrepreneur because we had 9 large avocado trees in our backyard at our house, and I sold the avocados. And so I just dedicated myself even more to selling avocados so that I could buy a bicycle exactly like my parents' teacher friend had. And so I did that just before I turned 15. And the day after I got that bicycle, I rode 80 kilometers through the mountains. And it's a transformative experience for me because, when you don't have your driver's license, you're dependent on your parents driving you somewhere or riding a bus, a train, or a plane to get somewhere. But when you start bicycling, more than just around your neighborhood, and you start realizing that you can bicycle 100, 200, 300 kilometers in a day, your whole world just shrinks and the opportunity for adventure expands exponentially. And so that's, you know, so I was already interested in history and culture and travel and all of that very heavily. But then the cycling allowed me, as you know, as a young teenager, to be able to go out and have these adventures on my own. And so then, as fate would have it, less than 2 years into being bicycling, I met the founder and the race director of the Race Across America. And I told him that I wanted to be an ultra cyclist, and I was 16, and I wanted to set a record for riding from San Francisco to Los Angeles, which is about 700 kilometers. And he pulled out his business card, flipped it over, and wrote his home phone number on the back, and gave it to me, and said he would help me. And his name is John Marino, and he became my mentor. He helped me learn how to promote myself, how to get sponsored, you know, how to train, how to organize my support crew. And so when I was 17, I set the first ever record for riding from San Francisco to Los Angeles. You know, this was before ultra cycling races other than the Race Across America existed. And so what people were doing was they were picking 2 points on a map and setting a time. And the weekend after I did that, another cyclist broke my record. And so then I dedicated myself to coming back a year later and being even faster, better support crew, all of that. And so organizing the team, putting the route together, promoting it, getting sponsors, all of that, those are all the like key components of putting on endurance sports events. And so my racing and my organizing started simultaneously, basically. And then I had the good fortune of being mentored by the founders of the Race Across America, and I was on the staff of that race twice. And I wasn't just on the staff, I was put in the front of the race as the front lead race official. And so I drove across country, you know, dealing with everything. And so I had a total immersion into ultra cycling and into event organizing right from the beginning. And, you know, by the time I was going off to college, you know, the university at Berkeley, when I was 18, I'd already qualified to be in the Race Across America. I'd already been on the staff of the race. I'd already taken my record back that had been, you know, it was broken, and then I broke it back a year later. And, you know, I was writing articles for magazines, and I was, you know, very involved with the endurance sports world. And so I decided I would basically study what I found interesting rather than try to study something that had a specific career potential. And that was how I ended up in archaeology.
Right. Yeah. And I think, you know, it's like just, I mean, one common thing between both these things that you just beautifully explained to us is the whole thing of exploring.
Yeah.
Right. So you go on your bicycle and you explore, you know, the continent, you explore places, and then you're actually exploring as an archaeologist as well. So I think that's the theme.
Yeah. I don't know, how do you say explore? Adventure is what? Romanche? Mujhe romanche pasande? Is that right?
Actually, I don't know. Yeah. Adventure.
Yeah. So exactly, because I love learning, and the best way to learn things is by experiencing them. Like, I love to read, and I read all the time, but going out and experiencing things firsthand is the best way to learn. But right at the beginning, I also wanted to share those experiences with other people. And so, like, when I got into cycling, my best friend, Doug, also did, you know, and I was getting all these other kids into cycling. And then I started writing articles for magazine, and it was always all about just like, come do this. This is great. This is exciting. This is meaningful. This is fun. This is life-changing. This is transformative. And that enthusiasm is what has always driven me in what I do in my life.
Yeah. In fact, Chris, so adventure, someone has written romanchak. That's what it is. And you got that absolutely correct.
Okay, nice.
And we have Anandita who says that Chris knows more Hindi than I do.
Shukriya.
Yeah.
It's a great language, I have to say. It's such a beautiful language, and it's so logical, and the Devanagari script is just genius. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I win
And
the lottery someday, I'm just going to study languages full time.
I
Starting with,
think, yeah, absolutely. I think you have like such wonderful, diverse interests, and you've done each one of them with utmost passion, whether it's your ultra cycling or being a race director, and you exactly know what you want to do next,
yeah.
getting into languages.
Yeah, I really feel like, we're here on this planet to, be a positive force for good, and also to enjoy ourselves at least most of the time. And,
Right.
that's not to say my life is easy or fun all the time. I mean, I work my butt off like most people, and I'm chained to my computer like most people most of the time. And, the irony is that I work way more than full time. I mean, I work 60,
Yeah.
80 hours a week all the time. And I have very little time to go out and train myself, and so I'm providing these opportunities for other people to go out and experience a new place athletically. But when I get asked all the time, oh, do you compete in your races? Well, no, because I'm putting them on. I mean, like, you can't do both. And I'm responsible for everybody and everything that's happening out there during the races. And so, participating is not possible. But
Right. In
yeah.
fact, we have a comment from Telma. Chris is learning Armenian too.
Yes, I am. That's my Armenia shelf right here. And then right above it, this is my India shelf. And yeah,
Yeah.
and Armenian is a very difficult language to learn. It's and people, most people don't even realize that these languages we're talking about, they're actually all related because they're Indo-European
Yeah.
languages. But I see more similarities between Hindi, Urdu, and English than I do Armenian and English. But occasionally I find them. So, for example, like the yoga pose Navasana
The boat.
and boat pose, and that's where we have the word navy or navigation in English, but in Armenian, nav is boat.
Wow.
So just every once in a while, you see these little connections like that,
Yeah.
and I love that.
Yeah. And because you have this interest in the languages, you just pick it on, right? Like because you kind of learned it in Armenian, you knew what is it called in Hindi
Yeah.
and so on, and you connected it. That's beautiful.
Sometimes it's confusing though. I go into my memory bank and I grab the wrong language,
Yeah.
and so I have to admit, in studying Armenian, I keep trying to go to Hindi because my other languages I've studied, like French and German and stuff, they're much closer, and so I go to like the further away language, but then it's too far and it's too far off on a different branch of the tree and everything. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
We
it's
have a fun
it's how you learn about people is but the way they.
Yeah, we have a fun comment,
Oh,
Chris. Can't help but notice. Do you have a Badwater whiskey bottle at the back?
I do. Yeah, this is something new we're doing. Actually, Badwater whiskey.
Oh,
Um,
really? Wow.
yeah, and Badwater pale ale beer. Yeah, these are
Wow.
brand new. We just launched them at our Badwater Cape Fear race, and we've got a website that's up at badwaterlife.com where people can sign up for updates about how to get them, and we have non-alcoholic drinks coming out also.
Oh, nice. But I
And
love this
Badwater is a way
concept.
of life, and so why not be able to drink it also?
Exactly. I was just about to come to that, like who says runners don't drink or can't drink? I mean, that's like a wonderful example of coming up with your own whiskey
Yeah.
brand.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and for those who don't drink alcohol, we have non-alcoholic drinks coming. And
Yeah.
being hydrated is important, and enjoying a drink with friends, it's part of socializing or celebrating things like that. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
those are exciting things that I'm working on
Very
with
interesting,
some
Chris.
great partners.
Yeah. Yeah, so just coming to the Badwater race, I mean, I've heard some of your interviews, and I know that, and for the audience to know that Badwater as an event officially started at a particular time, but even before the event actually started, it was happening unofficially when people were trying to achieve those courses.
Yes,
So, can you tell us a bit about who was the first person, what really happened, and how did that person choose that, and then how did it become official?
sure. So one of the things that's really interesting about the geography here in California is that the lowest place in North America is called Badwater Basin. It's 85 meters below sea level, and it's in Death Valley, which is officially, according to the Guinness Book of World Records, the world's hottest place. It hit 57 centigrade a little over 100 years ago. But then if you look on a map, just west of there, about 200 kilometers away, is Mount Whitney, which is the tallest mountain in the 48 states, that, you know, the contiguous states. And so back in the 60s and 70s, hikers and then runners started saying, hey, these 2 points on the map, let's connect them. And so there were a couple of people that took like backpacks and spent a week or two, you know, hiking the route from low to high. But then in the 70s, runners started trying to do it. And there was a runner from Northern California, from Walnut Creek, named Al Arnold, who attempted the run in 1974 and 75. Both times he didn't make it. And then he came back in 1977 and he completed the run, 84 hours, and was the first person to ever run from Badwater Basin all the way to the top of Mount Whitney. And so he proved it could be done. It was 4 years later before a runner named Jay Birmingham also completed the run, and he did it faster because, of course, he had a time to chase, Al Arnold's time. And so I like to say that Jay Birmingham created the race because he's the one who went even quicker. And so that was in 81. And then the actual race started in 1987. There were just 4 runners, an American man and woman and a British man and woman. And it's the only year that all 4 finished.
Wow.
And then it became an annual thing, but it was really small, like 12, 15, 20, 24 people. It was actually put on by a shoe company. It was more of like a marketing event for their shoes. And it was totally off the radar. There was, even all the way through the 90s, there was no website. You know, people didn't know how to get in or anything about it. But I had started organizing an 800-kilometer bicycle race through Death Valley in 1990. And I had struck up a relationship with the organizers of the Badwater Run. And in fact, I'd even been invited to compete in the race. But I got the opportunity to organize and direct a 3-day triathlon stage race in Canada. And so I did that instead. And so when they realized this shoe company was no longer making shoes called Badwater, and they weren't involved with running at all, and they decided there was no reason for them to be putting this race on anymore, they offered it to me. And so I took it over in 1999, and the first one I organized was 2000. And my idea of the race is, here's this incredible dramatic geography. I like to call it Mother Nature's greatest sports arena, because you go from this hottest place on earth through Death Valley, you go over 2 mountain ranges, and then you run to the end of the road on Mount Whitney. And so you can have this massive temperature change between the start and finish. You can have, you know, sandstorms. You can have, you know, freezing cold at the finish. We've had flash floods. We've had swarms of locusts. We've had forest fires. We've had all kinds of things over the years. And so my idea was, this is the Olympics of ultra running. And so when I took the race over, I launched the website. I established criteria for applying to participate. And the first race that I put on, I felt like was an incredible success, because the previous organizers really only wanted people who spoke English. And so it was mostly Americans and a couple of Europeans. That was it. The first one I put on, the top 5 finishing places were Russia, Slovenia, Japan, Russia. And it was 6th place before an American crossed the line. And of course, the men's and women's records were broken. And so for me, I was just thrilled, because I brought people from all over the world to compete in this race and to meet one another and get to know one another. And that's been, you know, a huge driving force behind the race for over 20 years now. And in fact, last year in our top 3 men, USA, Ukraine, Russia. And so, you know, for me, people meeting one another, getting to know one another, and being equals in a sporting event and as human beings is what it's all about. And that really drives me as an organizer. So now over 1,000 unique individuals have completed the race, which is a fourth of how many people have climbed Mount Everest.
Yeah.
And, you know, we traditionally generally have around 25 nations represented each year with just 100 runners. And this year we have 2 Indians, one who lives in India and one who lives here. And yeah, I love it every year. It's an incredible experience to be out there and to work with my team to make this experience happen for everyone.
Yeah. And Chris, thanks for that. And you've been doing this since 1999.
Yeah,
And
this
each
race.
year, yeah, this race,
Yeah.
and each year would be something different to learn from the previous year, and then something different in the next year. And it's also wonderful to know that the first time the race happened, like the one you said, with just 4 people,
Yeah.
you know, you had 2 Americans and 2 people from England,
Yeah.
uh, right? So it's nice that the first race itself saw global presence in some
Yes.
form or the other,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
even if there were just 4 people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's really a special place. And even people who come from hot desert climates find it dramatic and beautiful and challenging. And in fact, some of them take it, you know, they don't take it seriously enough because they live somewhere hot. And so they think, oh, I'm going to be ready for this. But you really need to prepare for the heat specifically to be
yeah.
successful in this event.
Yeah. So, Chris, what does it take for someone to be able to participate in this event?
Well, okay, so there are minimum qualifying standards. The way this race is organized is totally different from all the other ultra marathons on the planet in terms of selecting the race field. Most races, it's either first come, first serve. So you just try to sign up quickly, you know, like buying tickets to a concert.
Yeah.
Or they have a lottery where everyone's name is put in and they spin something, or it's digital or it's physical, and they pull it out. And or this is what we do, which is where we actually select the field. And so what for our race to even apply, an applicant who's a rookie has to have completed at least 3 100-mile or 160-kilometer true ultra marathons, not stage races, even to apply. And one of them has to have been in the past year. And so that's the bare minimum. And then for 2 weeks in January, we open up the application and we ask people a series of questions. And yes, part of it is tell us all the, you know, really tough races you've done, 100 miles or longer. But we also want to understand who these people are and what drives them and what their character is. And so we'll ask things like, what is the meaning of life? Or why are you on this planet? Why do you want to run the Badwater Ultra Marathon? Who is your Badwater idol? You know, things like that. And then we also ask them if they are running for a charity, and various other personal things. And then we accept those applications for 2 weeks, and then we have a committee of people, and we sit and review the applications, and we each score them. And so a 10 is perfect, and 0 is no thank you. And so they get a score somewhere between 0 and 10, and then we add those together, and the top scores get in. And that's basically how it works. Now, it used to be that we would take 50% veterans and 50% rookies. But there's just so many people all over the world who want to participate that the last few years we've started shifting it to more like 70-75% new runners, because we want to provide this opportunity to more people, and we can only take 100 in the race. And we want to be as inclusive as possible, and we want as many you know, nationalities and different types of backgrounds represented in the race. And so that's what we do now is we end up with about 3/4 new people, 1/4 veterans.
Yeah. And this is like, you know, and that's what like makes it so prestigious, because the application process just sounded like applying to an Ivy League college or just having like a
That's what
statement.
people say.
Yeah, this is like the Ivy League of running, of ultra running. So it's like you prepare a statement of purpose and take it from there.
Right. And just like people from all over the world apply to universities in other countries, and they have language challenges and all of that. And so, you know, it's always interesting reading these applications, and occasionally they submit them in their native language. And, you know, I'll put all the pieces into Google Translate, and then I'll pass that along to the committee so that they don't have to do it. Most of them come in English, but sometimes we get them in other languages, and that's fine. And then other times you can tell that they've got a friend, or maybe they even hired somebody to translate for them, because it'll be in the third person. You know, Miss such and such that says that, you know, and it's just fantastic to read, because you never know. I mean, who's going to apply from where, and it's just fascinating. It's like all of a sudden here's somebody from, you know, Maharashtra, or, you know, Siberia, or, you know, the Atacama Desert. Like, they could be just coming from anywhere. I mean, the internet and knowledge of this race are basically everywhere. And with the media coverage and the books that runners have done and the podcasts and everything, there's this awareness. And the sport of ultra running has really grown massively over the last 20 years. When I took over the Badwater, which is 135 miles, 23 years ago, there were about 10 100-mile races in America. And now there's like, I don't know, 400 or something. And that's just in this country. And then, you know, there are many race directors in India now putting on, you know, super long races, and all over the world. And because of that, the sport is growing. And then, as you know, part of the whole fabric of what ultra running is going somewhere new and having a great adventure. And so then they start, you know, these runners start looking around or hearing about things. And, you know, sometimes the legend of Badwater, you know, whispers into their ear, and they've got to come be part of it.
Yeah. We have a comment, Chris. Can you please stand up and show your physique, Chris? I really want to see
No.
how fit cycling can make you.
I am not a world-class athlete anymore. I was for about 14 years. I was a sponsored cyclist and endurance athlete. Cycling is a great sport, and I love it. But after I finished the Race Across America when I was 20, that's when I realized, oh, I'm not just a cyclist, I'm an athlete. And that's what led to doing Ironmans and, you know, 100-mile snowshoe races in Alaska, some marathons. I ran a marathon as recently as about 5 years ago. And I would love to do one in the next year. But I just do a variety of things. I practice yoga. I do stand-up paddleboarding. I hike. I run some. I bike. That's kind of what I do. So, but yeah, you don't have to be a world-class athlete to organize world-class races. You need to be a world-class organizer. And it's all about keeping track of a million different details simultaneously and constantly adjusting to all the things that happen, you know, leading up to as well as during the races.
Right. And we have another question, Chris. Have you experienced 70 years and older people qualifying for this race?
Absolutely. We've actually had a runner as old as 80 participate. He didn't finish, but he had been our first 70-year-old to finish. He's a British man named Jack Denness. But we've had multiple runners over 70. The 70-plus record is in the low 30 hours. It's incredible. And this year we have a 77-year-old competing. His name is Bob Becker. He actually organizes the Keys 100 Ultra Marathon in Florida. And he's done all of our Badwater races, our whole series, several times. And he's 77 this year, and he'll be participating. And so we've had from 19 to 80 participate, and I think 75 was actually the oldest finisher. So yeah, that's part of what's so wonderful about this sport is it's not just about, you know, who the first three fastest runners are. It's not just about like even the super skinny people. I mean, there's, you know, quite a few very normal looking people in the race. It's not just, you know, the vast majority are quite like normal looking. It's not, you know, ultra running isn't really all about like being the skinniest person on the planet in order to cover the distance, because And there's so much more to it than just physique. I mean, it's, you know, the psychological and emotional aspects are huge, and you know, motivation and what drives people and all of those things are much more important than what people look like or what their body fat percentage is.
Exactly. And like you said, it's just beyond the race. Like you call it the Badwater family. It's about meeting people from different nationalities, spending time together,
Yeah.
and just exploring the course. And like you said, it's the course that people are actually fighting against. And it's not really competing who comes first and who comes second and all of that. That's secondary.
It is. And, you know, of course, for those people up front or who aspire to be up front, that is a very, you know, big driving factor. But at the end of the day, you have 100 runners. There can only be one male winner, one female winner. But yeah, the family reunion aspect of the race is huge, and the camaraderie is incredible. And one of the things that the runners consistently tell me that they love about the selection process is that when they stand on the start line and they look around, they feel like everybody's equal, because everybody had to go through the same application and selection process to even be there. Whereas you'll have a lottery, you'll have people on the start line of a race who really don't deserve to be there. They have no chance of finishing, but they happen to get in through the lottery, and so they're just doing it. And what we're looking for is, first and foremost, people who can successfully complete the race. I mean, that's more important than anything about them. Like, first, we want to have confidence that they're capable of doing it. And so that creates this sort of equality, this level playing field. So even if some runners are going to do it in 24 hours and some in 36, 40, 44, 48 hours, there is still this incredible mutual respect where everybody looks at one another, as being equal, and everybody wants everyone to have their best possible experience. And so it's normal for runners to help one another, for the support crew of one runner to help another runner or their support crew if they're running low on something or need something or have a problem. That is, absolutely part of the whole Badwater experience.
Yeah, yeah. And Chris, my next question actually is, and that's, I think someone has asked that question also, that why, I mean, what makes it the toughest foot race on Earth? And that's one of the questions also, that why have you made this race so difficult?
Well, I would say Mother Nature made it so difficult because, I mean, human beings are curious. Like, this is why we have language and so many things, because we're curious and we want to communicate and we want to experience. And so when Mother Nature puts the lowest point in North America next to the tallest mountain in the 48 continental United States, it's only natural that people would want to go between those 2 points. Now, when runners started doing this or attempting to do it back in the 70s, those people decided, well, if we're going to do this, let's do it in July or August, the hottest part of the year, because that's what Death Valley is famous for. And so they actually did that. So you could kind of blame those runners back in the 70s. And then when that first race was held, the races have always been in July or August. And I remember saying, I forget which one of the early runners or founders said something about, they don't want to tiptoe around Mother Nature. They want to experience her in all her glory. And that's why, they hosted the race in that time of the year. But all that said, there's so much focus on the heat, but there's so much more to the race route. And, you asked me what makes it so difficult.
Yeah.
It's the location. The air is extremely dry. With every exhale, people are dehydrating. Even at night, it's in the 90s or 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And so even at night, you're getting super dehydrated. But then there's 3 mountain ranges. So there's about 5,000 meters of elevation gain. So you climb 3 mountains along the route. Also, the race is on pavement. Most ultra running races are on trails, and pavement is harder on the body, and it's also hotter. The heat is radiating off of the road. And then there's the distance, 135 miles or 217 kilometers. And then there's the time limit, 48 hours. If you don't make it in 48 hours, you don't receive the belt buckle. And then there's the competition. So there are people who like to go out and do the route on their own, which is fine. but that's not the same as competing in a race where there's 100 competitors and there are, time splits and final results, and also the eyes of the world. I mean, people are glued to our website and our social media in July each year, watching all of these runners and how they're doing and what they're doing and where they are and which state or country, or nationality do they represent. And so there's all of that pressure of, you were selected to be in this race, and then you're representing where you're from, and all of these people are watching you, and so it's like a pressure cooker in a super hot place.
Yeah. And like you said, it's the Olympics of ultra running, right? So people are watching you.
Yeah. And we celebrate the nationalities. We want the flags there, and and we trumpet them for being wherever they're from. And also there's a real equality. Like, everyone from first to last finishers receives the belt buckle. There's no like big prize for being the winner. You receive the belt buckle and the official finisher t-shirt, and that's what you receive. If you're there under 48 hours, then that's what you receive. And and then in the magazine that we publish, like each year we put photos of the first man and woman and the last man and woman, and facing pages in the magazine, because it's the whole field is equally important and equally special.
Wow, that's wonderful. There's just so much to learn from this event in general. Yeah. And we have again a comment from Telma, and sleep deprivation because the race starts at night. To add to it.
So she is the first Armenian runner to finish the race, by the way.
Wow.
So the race starts in 3 waves of 30 to 40 runners each at 8, 9:30, and 11 p.m. at night. And so the runners go straight into sleep deprivation. And then after being up all night running, they will need to have covered about 80 kilometers before the sun comes up. And like I said, all night, it's super hot. We have people drop out every year in the first 50, 80 kilometers because they are overheated and they can't handle it. And then the sun comes up, and not only does the sun come up and it gets even hotter, but then at sunrise, the runners start climbing the mountain pass to leave Death Valley. And that's 30 kilometers and about 1,600 meters of climbing nonstop. And then that's just to leave Death Valley. I mean, you're not even, you're not even halfway yet. And then you drop into the Panamint Valley and it gets super hot again. And then you have another major mountain climb. And so the runners are dealing with sleep deprivation and extreme conditions from start to finish. And that's why they each have a personal support team that leapfrogs along with them to take care of them on the course.
Yeah. And
we jokingly but seriously say we can't put up aid stations for the runners because the volunteers would die.
I see.
The runners need fluid like every 2 or 3 kilometers. And so their support team leapfrogs along and takes care of all of their needs.
Yeah. And talking about the support team, Chris, I mean, there could be times when the support teams do not know the runner, or the support teams do not know each other, in case they don't have a pre-decided support team with them. So how do those dynamics work out? Because there's already like 10 things that you spoke about to worry about.
Yeah.
You don't want... So how does that work? The dynamics
of that up
members.
Because, it's exactly like you said. Sometimes runners spend years applying and preparing, and they've already got their team of running friends. When I get into Badwater, boom, their team comes together. They all know one another. They've all raced together. They've supported one another in other races. Some of them have been to the race before, and they just show up like, special forces team from the military, where everything's just boom, ready to go. And then you'll have people who often from foreign countries, but also from the US, where they, need to recruit local people because, they don't have the money to fly all these people in with them from another place. And there are more people who want to be on a support crew than there are places on a support crew. Because it's an incredible experience to be on a support crew. And also, if somebody aspires to do the race someday, it's really a worthwhile experience because they understand not only what they're training for, but what they're organizing for. Right. And putting that support crew together is so important. And so we've seen, the wide spectrum of possible human emotional experiences where perfect strangers, like I remember there was this one runner, he was, I want to say, from like Argentina, and this all international crew came together. They were from 4 different countries. Only some of them spoke Spanish and some of them spoke English. And it was like, boom. And they showed up and they all supported this runner and had this incredible experience. And they're still friends now and everything. And then we've had, friends show up to work together, and it doesn't go well because somebody needs to be in charge. Somebody needs to make decisions, and the other people need to be able to accept direction. And so, we have that phrase in English, too many cooks in the kitchen. You can't have too many cooks in the kitchen. And then there's the whole dynamic of the support team and the runner, like who's in charge, who's making these big strategic decisions. And sometimes the crew wants to make decisions for the runner that the runner doesn't agree with. And we've had also where the runner lays out exactly to the crew, this is how I want you to support me. This is what I want to eat and drink. This is what how it should work. And then the race starts and they do something totally different. And so, there's a phrase in ultra sports that involves support crews, which is the crew can't win the race for you, but they can lose it. And so we've seen, really unfortunate things happen out there. I mean, it's the exception. We average over 80% of the runners finish, and and they're still friendly with their support crew and everything. But we've also had, people not get along well, and it didn't go well. So it's very important that the runners select a really good support crew that makes sense and that will work together, and that by the time they get to the race, if they don't know each other in person, they've been having, video calls and planning meetings and things like that. Yeah.
It's the whole package. It's just not the run.
That's what people don't
so many things.
And what's so different, because there's almost no other ultra marathon that requires a support crew, very few. And most ultra marathons, you can just show up with your stuff, and you can show up with nothing, and you just go run and you eat the food and drink that's provided at the aid stations, and everything is up to you. It's your schedule, your decisions, your pace, your everything. And then there's this race where you put yourself in the hands of 2, 3, or 4 people, and hope that they will take care of you properly, and hopefully they do.
Such a big responsibility that the crew has actually to support their runners.
There it is. And also we're on the open roads. I mean, there's cars driving by. We have heavy government oversight from the National Park Service, the United States Forest Service, the Department of Transportation, the California Highway Patrol, the Inyo County. We have to get all of these permits and work very closely with our local partners. And they want to see a smooth and safe event. They don't want any issues or incidents out there. And so the pressure is on the crew to not only take good care of the runner, but to follow all of these rules and to, drive carefully, park carefully. And it's a lot. And they're tired too, like the runners.
Yeah, absolutely. And your experience, Chris, as a race director, because, through that entire stretch of 135 miles or 217 kilometers, I mean, there's no network, right? So as a race director, how do you kind of manage that entire stretch, which is so long?
Yeah, it's fortunately, I've been organizing the race for 23 years now, and most of my staff works the race every year. And so when the race starts, they just do everything they need to do, and they need very little, if not any, management from me. And so that's the first and most important aspect of why the race goes as well as it does, is because I have an incredible race staff that are totally dedicated and professional and enthusiastic, and they love the race, they love the runners, and they want, a smooth and safe race. Because as you said, there's almost no mobile phone service on the majority of the route. There's only internet in a handful of places. We only even passed through one town, which is Lone Pine. You know, you're almost at the finish, and then a couple of just small settlements: Furnace Creek, Stovepipe Wells, Panamint Springs. Those are the only other places where you can even buy gas or food or ice. And so mainly it goes well because I have a well-oiled machine of incredible people who go out and they do all of their jobs. Like we have the timing checkpoints, we have the roving race officials, we have the medical headquarters, we have the roving medical, we have the photographers and the video people and the webcast team, and then the finish line team. And then, you know, and then so what I do is I go up and down the course for the first 20 hours or so. And I'm just out there going back and forth, interacting with people, you know, doing photography, meeting all of the runners at least a few times along the way to say hello and encourage them, and the support crews, and of course my staff. And then after about 20 hours, then I head to the finish line with my finish line team, and we set that up. And then I'm at the finish for every finisher. And so then I'm up there for like 28 hours, 26 hours, and I personally hand out the buckles and do a lot of the photography and congratulate people and share that experience with them.
Yeah, and I think it's a very beautiful thing that you said that you're there for every finisher at the finish line. So that would mean you would wait for those 100 people to finish and be there.
Yeah, I mean, it's very personal for me. I care about these people tremendously. I really want everyone to finish. As I mentioned earlier, only the first race with 4 runners did everyone finish. And so every year I make 100 buckles, and every year my dream is to hand them all out. And the most I think we've had is 89. And then I want to share that experience with all of the runners. And then meanwhile, I know that my race staff is out on the course. They're taking care of the other 135 miles. I can just be focused on the finish line and the finishers and the support crew and my finish line team. And yeah, and I love being there to make sure. Sometimes, I mean, literally, like a lot come in at night and they'll hit the tape and we get the photos. And sometimes the photo isn't perfect. And I'll literally say, let's do it again. Because I know, even though they're tired, that they want a really good finish line photo. Right?
Yeah.
And so they will always say, okay, yeah. And then they back up, 10 meters or something. And they always finish with their support crew all together, and then boom, then we get the photo. I want to make sure that their experience is perfect and that it's documented perfectly, and then we go through the various steps of awarding them their buckle and their t-shirt and a photo of them with those things, a photo of the runner with me, a photo of the runner with the support crew. And, we have this whole process of what happens at the finish line, because this is what years or even decades of training and dreaming and working and aspiring to do have culminated in this time, these 5 or 10 minutes that we spend at Mount Whitney Portal. I want it to be perfect for everyone. And I also want to share it with everyone.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, Chris. In fact, we have Anandita who says that this is so inspiring and fun, makes me want to join.
Well, there are people every year there are a few hundred people who come to the race every year. If they are not racing, they are on a support crew or they are on my staff. They have to make it part of them. And that's also part of what makes it great is it's a running race and the focus is the runners, but it's a fantastic experience and opportunity for everybody. And there are people who will be there in some capacity every year. Like Bob Becker, who I mentioned earlier, who's going to be 77 when he competes this summer. He's been there something like 15 years in a row or something like that. He's always there. And that's just one example. And I would also mention that we do host a couple of other Badwater races in different places, and they're not as long. They're still ultra marathons and very challenging and beautiful and unique places. But there are other ways to be part of the world of Badwater besides being the person who runs 217 kilometers in the hottest place on earth.
Yeah. And I think that is one thing that runners might like, right? I mean, it's nice that you have these other events, which could be stepping stones to the Badwater 135. So at least they feel a part of the Badwater community, even if they haven't done the 135.
Well, and even if they're not stepping stones, for some it is. We've had runners, they come to our Badwater Cape Fear race, which is either 50 or 80 kilometers. and
Wow.
it's on the East Coast. And for some people, it's their first ultra marathon, and they've done a Badwater race. But they see what the Badwater experience and the Badwater family are about, and then they really get into the sport. And then maybe 5 years later, they're joining us in Death Valley for the Badwater 135. And then, you know, whereas there are others who come to that race and maybe they just do that every year, and that's their, you know, way of being part of Badwater. And you know, it's a global family of horizon chasers, and it's also kind of a specific camaraderie of the athletes and a certain way of hosting and organizing races that define what Badwater is. And yeah, I love
So some
having.
people are actually so passionate about it, like the gentleman you just mentioned who's turning 77,
Yeah.
that they would have like their annual calendar blocked from this time in July to this time. I'm not going anywhere. This is what I'm doing every year.
Yeah, in fact, I used to always get the question, when is the race next year or the year after? And finally, I put it on the website. Here's the next 5 years. Because people want to plan. And of course, lots of people have to plan their vacation time and things with their family and all of that. And so they'll be planning, you know, 2 years out that they're going to be there. And maybe they aspire to compete that year, but they're still going to block it out. Maybe they don't get into the race. But hopefully if they didn't get in, they come on a support crew instead. But yeah, there are definitely people whose calendar is like, when is the Badwater 135? And then everything else is around that.
Is around that. Yeah. Yeah. So in fact, Chris, very interesting because you've written so many articles on, you know, just about endurance sports and ultra sports and so on. You know, just wanted to know that why do these people do what they do? Like the endurance athletes, you know, they would do things that would come naturally to them, but they go through a lot of grind. There are a lot of things that happen along the way, which are not pleasant. It could be, you know, just throwing up or just fainting or just going through a whole lot of, you know, not so good things along the way, but they would come again the year after and the year after and the year after. So what is the mindset of an endurance athlete? I mean, what makes them do it year after year?
Well, okay, so I've been a part of an ultra endurance sport since I was, you know, a teenager. And for me, what I've observed over the decades is that people do these races because they can, which seems kind of crazy because you don't know you can until you start doing it. And so there's always that leap of faith. People, you know, need to believe in themselves and see the intrinsic value of running or cycling or triathloning or paddling or whatever, some crazy long distance for some little tiny physical, you know, reward, you know, a buckle or a medal or something, because that's not really why they're there. I call it exploring the outer and inner universes. And so the concept is we're going to travel through this certain geography and, you know, race from here to there or around something. And there's that geography, whatever the route is. Every route has something special about it, something that, you know, makes it what it is. And it's an example of what it is to be in that place. And that place's challenges. But at the same time that you're experiencing all of that geography, you're also traversing the inside of yourself. And that's what has always intrigued me about it, because I remember that the day after I got my first real bicycle and I did this 80-kilometer ride through the mountains, like right now, I can specifically remember the feeling of riding back into my hometown, which is called Glendora. It's a suburb of Los Angeles. And I remember with my friend Doug, there's the Glendora city limits sign, and we, you know, put our arms up in the air. And I remember feeling like, this is incredible what we just did, what we just saw. And we did it ourselves. Our parents didn't drive us. We physically did this. And it was so meaningful personally that the challenges of the day become totally unimportant. And that's a funny thing about humans in general, is that most humans experience something difficult and then they forget about that part and they remember all the good things. And that's like a coping mechanism, I think, psychologically. Otherwise, we would just be traumatized all the time and unable to do anything, because everybody experiences trauma in their life, obviously some more than others, but terrible things happen in life, and yet we tend to focus on the good things and the positive things and to push those thoughts away. And that's why it becomes possible to do something as insane as these races and go through so many physical challenges, vomiting, diarrhea, huge blisters, falling asleep on your feet, falling down and, hurting yourself, having hallucinations, all kinds of, having your feet like just look horrible and, barely able to walk. And yet people will push through all of that and keep going, most of the time. Most of the people will finish. And so you start learning all of these life lessons and kind of putting them in a bank in your soul and in your mind that you can reflect upon. For example, it's going to get better. And that's one of the things that I learned, especially when I was in the Race Across America. Like, I could have hand problems, foot problems, knee problems, neck problems, but then a day or two later they would go away because my body would adapt and they would go away. And so when you have these physical problems in a race, once you do enough races, you'll learn that most of those problems will actually go away during the race. And if they don't go away during the race, they're going to go away when you're done, or within a day or a week or something. And then you realize, well, that doesn't matter. And, there's a funny saying that I learned from one of our Badwater runners, Kurt Maples: mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
And I just love that. I think it's perfect because, why does it really matter if I'm uncomfortable? Why does it matter if I have blisters or, I'm sunburned or, my knee hurts or something like that? To me, as long as you're not doing something physically destructive where you're going to have permanent damage, then there's no reason to stop. And so, and I see the runners, live the same attitude when they're out there. We've had people who have thrown up and had diarrhea 40 times each during the race and still finished. And, and then there's the people who threw up once and like, oh my God, I threw up, I have to quit and go home. Now, we don't get many of those at the Badwater 135 because it was such an effort to get into the race. But who cares if you throw up? Like, I used to teach scuba diving, and we'd be in the water and we would have to go up to the surface to talk to our students and explain the next drill. And when you're on the surface bobbing up and down, like, you're just getting sick really quickly. And then, we would drop back down to do the skill, and it's like they're doing the skill or I'm doing the skill. And it's just like, bleh, throw up, keep on scuba diving and doing the drill and learning the skills. Because who cares? It's just nature. Big deal.
Yeah. And that's a great mindset to have. Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great mindset to have. And also because I think the more times you throw up and once you finish the race, you'll even be happier. You'll be so euphoric that I actually did all that and I still finished it.
Exactly. You earned it.
You earned it. Yeah.
This is another reason that we don't sort of overly celebrate the winners of our races, because they actually have the easiest time out there. Like, they got it done the soonest. They had the least number of problems. And, it was kind of almost easy for them. It's those people in the back half that really suffered. And that's why we treat everyone equally, because, those people who are back there, it's not just, because they run slower. It's because they dealt with so many things and they rose above those challenges. And they said, I don't care that, this is happening or I'm experiencing this. I want to finish. I want to cross that line with my support team. And they want that photo and they want that buckle, and they will just push through whatever it is. And like I said, as long as they're not hurting themselves, then they should keep going, because that's what they signed up for. That's what it's about. And I've never had anyone tell me they wished they dropped out.
Yeah. It's just beautiful. I can just while just talking to you, I can imagine the scene at the finish line, it's just in my mind of how it would be. And it's lovely to know that you give equal importance to all the peoples even the back of the pack and front end, just anyone in between.
Everybody's equal in the world of Badwater, and everyone who earned that buckle, earned it. And it's a special club of people that I'm, proud to be, the organizer of. I'm not a member of it. I've never earned that buckle myself, but yeah, it's a great experience. And yeah, and it could be 3 o'clock in the morning and there's nobody there, but like 4 of us on the race staff and then the runner and the crew. And, but we're going to give that same experience to everybody.
Yeah. And I always find it like this entire topic of endurance sports and life in general, there are just so many parallels to draw, because you are that one person running that race and you're the same person after the race going back into your regular, normal life. So whatever you learn from the race, you kind of bring it back to life and vice versa. And just so much to learn. And because you could do those 5 tough things in the race or 10 tough things, if life
Yeah.
throws something at you, maybe you just know how to better deal with it. And that's the parallel between the endurance world and life.
And that is a huge part of what drew me into it right away, because I think humans sort of think and operate in metaphors, and they see the comparisons between things, and it's just part of being human, I think. And so, yeah, when, once you've earned this buckle, I mean, what are you going to do that's actually harder? It's certainly in the physical world. Definitely in the emotional world, there can be, people go through really challenging personal things that happen in their life. But I believe that people develop tools and skills from endurance sports that they use in their whole life. It's not just like, oh, I'm proud to be a Badwater finisher. It's actually specific coping mechanisms and skills and tools that they can apply to their daily life, and hopefully demonstrate or even teach to other people. And that's why I started writing early on, because I wanted to get other people out there doing these things, but also to share things that I was learning. The life lessons of endurance sports are so useful in so many ways. And, more people, I wish more people were doing it. I mean, there's more every year, but even more.
Yeah, but just see from where to where it's even come now.
I know.
From that one person to those 4 people and then 100, and
Yeah,
it's just,
it's
and from different geographies representing different nationalities.
It's amazing. Like yeah. I mean, I love seeing the applications or just the emails or the messages I get throughout the year from all over the planet. It's amazing the influence that this one race has had. And and there have been runners who, where they live, there aren't any ultra marathons happening. And they not only want to participate in ultra marathons and provide that opportunity to people, but they also want races they can do to help them qualify to even be in our race. And so we've literally had, people apply who help start races where they live, inspired by wanting to come to the Badwater 135 someday. And yeah, the growth of the sport is amazing. And, but our races will always be very intimate. All 3 of the races I have are 100 or 100 and some people, because I don't want, it's great there are races with, 20, 40,000 runners, not ultra marathons, but other, marathons and such. And that's great. And that's a great experience. I've run the Boston Marathon, and it was amazing to be part of, 40,000 runners, on the historic route. But our races are known for being intimate, so that you have time alone on the course, and that you also can develop some camaraderie with the other runners. And but I really want people to have that solitude as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of endurance sports. It's like, give each person whatever they want to do, whether it's a 5K or a full marathon or an ultra marathon, whether it's a city race, like just about speed, whether it's an ultra in, places like the Badwater. It's just about testing different things in different environments.
Absolutely.
And it just gives you that platform to choose.
All right. And you can have incredible experiences at any of those types of races you just mentioned. Even training indoors, like the whole concept of indoor cycling, spinning, was created by a friend of mine that was in the race. I was in the Race Across America with, and I helped him launch spinning into the world and take it all over and turn it into what it is. And, as part of a team of people doing that. But I remember the first spinning class I had, where I had this intense emotional, psychological, spiritual experience in an hour on a stationary bike indoors. And so, people can have that if they're open to it and, seek it out, whether it's that or a 5K. I mean, you run a 5K, whether you're going for a personal record or you're there to try to finish, it's a big deal. And it's meaningful, and you traverse different emotions, and you're part of, something bigger. And I encourage people to just get out and be active, and to sometimes do it in an event so that you're part of a group of people.
Yeah. Just some questions, Chris. Are there any age? I mean, like you mentioned, we have the youngest and the oldest, but are there any age categories for this?
We don't really break the race into age groups that much, but we do keep track of all of the age group records, 10 plus, 20 plus, 30 plus, up through 70 plus. And so, yeah, all of those course records are on our website, and something that we look at every year, and something that certain runners are going for. But when you only have 100 or less runners, it's more about just everybody together. And certainly the majority of the runners are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. But we definitely have, 20s and 60s and 70s. And, and we have people who've done the race 10 or more times, who've gone through multiple age categories. And,
Yeah. I know, that's true. I mean, the person who's turning 77 would have done this in his early 60s. And
yeah. What's another amazing thing about him is his first marathon, he was 56.
Wow, that's so inspiring.
So, there's still hope,
there's still hope.
I work too much, but hey, I'm not 56 quite yet. And so,
yeah,
it's so much to be inspired and impressed by.
Yeah. And I think you've already covered this, Chris, but I will just put this on. Any wild card entries in Badwater? No.
Maaf kijiye, Manish. But no, there are no wild card entries, because everyone has to be qualified to even apply. Now, we do take a few people each year who make a huge donation to one of our 2 official charities. We're talking $7,500, who can guarantee to get in, but they still have to meet the qualifying standards to even do that. So that's the only way to guarantee getting in, and we'll have a couple of people maybe each year do that. Otherwise, no, because we want people who are going to finish the race. And I hear from people all the time, they haven't done any 100-milers, but they know they can finish the race. And I'm like, well, it's good that you know, but we want to believe it. We want to know it too. And the best way to know that is by looking at somebody's track record. And so we want people who we feel confident can finish. But also, I mentioned earlier, all the government oversight and all the permitting for the event. All of those government agencies are looking to us to host a safe and smooth event. If we just let random people enter, who don't understand the sport or the conditions, crazy things could happen out there. And, that's not good. That's not, there's no point.
And there is a reason why you do what you do. So that's what it is.
There is. I mean, none of this is arbitrary. Whether it's the selection process or all of the rules for the race, all of it's based on the real world experience of hosting this race in this venue, as well as, all the other races that I've hosted over the decades. It's, there's a reason for it. Anyone can ask me, well, why is this required? Or why do we have to do that? And I can tell everyone exactly why. And when people sometimes say, oh, there's too many rules. Okay, tell me the specific rules that I can get rid of. And we don't like to have lots of rules, but we want to have a safe and smooth race that we have the privilege of hosting next year. Because all of those government agencies have to see us host a good event that's safe and smooth for them to have confidence that we can do it again next year. And that's why we do things the way we do. So I'm glad that you appreciate that. Some people think we just like to invent rules or something, but no, we don't. We just like to host a smooth race that we get to host next year.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Chris. We have a comment from Aditi. Endurance sports and the mind strength required sounds a lot like what it takes to be a writer and to persist. For example, in my Buddhist practice, no matter what.
Yeah. Well, as the Buddha said, all of life is suffering.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I mean, persistence is really what I think a successful life is about, right? Because take the writing example. You know, I used to write a lot. I made about half of my living for about 10 years as a writer, but I never had a salary. I was constantly hustling, selling ideas to magazines. And this is what I want to write about, and, you know, getting the assignment. And it was a lot of work. And I had to keep, you know, I had to be persistent in constantly finding new magazines to write for, new ideas to write about, and, you know, keep pitching it in order to, you know, get what I wanted to say out there and to earn a small paycheck. And it was a lot of work. And that's like almost every career is like that. There are all these times that you have to dig in, dig deep, you know, take a deep breath. I mean, I have to do it all the time. I mean, all the time. And I don't love it any more than anyone else. But I do get reminded by the athletes or the people who aspire to do my races who message me like how meaningful these races are. And I have to remind myself like how much this means to people. And so when I'm dealing with, you know, putting out a bunch of different fires, you know, 3 days before a race or, you know, something like that, then, you know, it's on me to make it happen because the show must go on. And that's true for everybody. I mean, we all have to put a roof over our heads and feed ourselves and take care of our loved ones. And yeah.
Yeah. And thank you so much, Chris. I think, you know, this entire journey, the entire experience that you spoke about, it's about the runners, it's about the crew, it's about behind the scenes, it's about you as a race director, it's about your entire team that always stands with you and goes out on the track year after year, and people applying, you know, kind of reading their SOPs, like we said, you know, the statement of purpose, and it's about people going back, finishing, not finishing, and, you know, writing back to you about what they appreciated about this whole thing, and about people wanting to come back again and again for this. So yeah, it's just like so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate, you know, that you understand and respect all that. I mean, you live on the other side of the planet and we've never met, and but I appreciate your interest and enthusiasm, and I appreciate what you do, you know, that you are, you know, putting these stories and these people and these insights out to your community. And, you know, and that's, you know, a big value as well. And so, Maho Shakriya to you for what you do.
Thank you so much. We have people saying that very inspiring session. And thanks, Chris and Soumya, for a wonderful discussion. We enjoyed the podcast. Yeah. So thank you so much, Chris, for doing this first thing your morning.
Yeah. And tune into badwater.com this July 11, 13 through 13. We have two Indian runners, one from India, Ashish.
Ashish.
Yes. Yeah. And then one who lives here in the States named Gurinder Singh. And he lives here. And so we have two representing the incredible nation of India this summer. And then 25 other countries as well. So hit our website, our social media.
So this is badwater.com.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris, for speaking to us. Like I said, you know, first thing your morning. And thank you everyone in the audience. Yeah. And thank you everyone in the audience for doing this on your Friday night. And Chris, your Friday morning.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.